robots, they are not what they used to be.
Before recently, we had to program robots to do specific things. We had to give them specific instructions.
Now they can learn new skills with trial and error. I'm Carolyn Beeler.
And I'm Marco Werman. Today, why huge advances in robotics are exciting for some and scary for others. Also in Mali, militant groups are gaining ground. We'll break down the players and their alliances.
Plus, it looks like a breakthrough in plastic recycling, but it may not be so easy.
We as an industry were too quick to claim the solution to the problem.
Plus, what makes a marmalade great.
There's an X factor, so you just have no idea when you open the jars what's going to happen.
Find out with us today on The World.
This is The World. I'm Marco Werman.
And I'm Carolyn Beeler. Thanks for coming along this Tuesday. Flags are at half-staff in Mali as the West African nation observes a second day of mourning. This after an unexpected attack on the capital, Bamako, on Sunday. The country's defense minister, Sadio Kamara, was among the dead.
Un deuil national de 2 jours, à compter du lundi 27 avril à 0 heure.
A spokesman for Mali's ruling military junta announced the period of mourning for the fallen defense minister on Mali's state broadcaster.
En hommage au général Sadio Kamara.
The violence in Mali right now represents an existential fight for the government there as al-Qaeda-linked jihadists and Tuareg separatists gain ground. Today, these allied militant forces claim control of the northeastern Malian city of Kidal. But it is a complicated picture. So we turned to Ulf Lessing. He's a security analyst with the Konrad Adenauer Foundation, based in Bamako. When we caught up with him today in Cairo, he explained that going back to Bamako now is not an option.
Right now, I can't. The German government, as other countries, have asked their citizens to leave. For the time being, it's shaky. I think it's somewhat returning, but there seems to be still some pockets of fighting around Bamako airport. I hope things will improve, but we also need a sign of life from the military leader, Goita.
Yeah, Goita, he is the president of the country, correct?
Yeah, exactly. He's the one who staged the coup in 2020 and then has now appointed himself for another 5 years in power. Nobody has seen him since the attack. The defense minister was killed. Goita, nobody has seen. I assume he's hiding. I mean, the fact that they really hit defense minister in a position strike knows someone has given the rebels from inside the system coordinates. So that's why I think Goita now, he keeps really a low profile hiding for now until this situation is under control again.
So following the coup in 2021 that brought the military junta to power, they kicked out French and UN security forces that were supporting the previous government. We've got this Russian military group, Africa Corps. They have left Kidal. Elaborate a bit more on what this current instability says about the effectiveness of the military junta.
They were kind of desperate for outside help, but made the wrong bet. They brought in the Russian mercenaries, which claimed they could, do a better job than the French. I mean, France had for 10 years counterterrorism operation. They also weren't successful, but that is because the nature of Mali is such a vast country, mostly desert and mountains. It's very difficult to control. The French had maybe like 5,000-6,000 soldiers here, and the Russians came with around 1,500. So it was really wrong expectation. They oversold the Russians their pitch. They never stood a chance. And at the end, it's now also a bit of it's a complete wrong calculation by the military government and a defeat for Russia, which promised too much.
Do you have any sense of where Mali's military junta can now turn for military assistance to fight these two groups?
Yeah, there's not much left. The Europeans are gone. The French are gone. I mean, interestingly, under the Trump administration, the U.S. sent a couple of visitors and offered counterterrorism assistance. Nothing has come out of it, also because the Malians were a bit lukewarm. That was a few months ago when they still thought the Russians would help them. So now maybe they're a bit more open to some kind of cooperation, but I expect whatever the U.S. would have to offer would be some kind of maybe intelligence sharing. They wouldn't put boots on the ground. So the U.S. is pretty much the only option, a very limited one. And then there's Turkey, who was certainly willing to sell more drones, but they also don't work for free. So these drones are really expensive. Not sure that is another good option.
On Sunday, the Economic Community of West African States, ECOWAS, issued a statement calling for, quote, all states security forces, regional mechanisms, and populations of West Africa to unite and mobilize in a coordinated effort to respond to the attacks in Mali. Mali, let's remember, withdrew from ECOWAS recently. So what can ECOWAS actually do here to intervene?
Yeah, basically nothing. Mali, together with Niger and Burkina Faso, the neighbors, which are also run by the military left, ECOWAS. So I think ECOWAS it's a way of them to saying we're open to cooperate with you guys. I mean, there's a bit of cooperation with some ECOWAS members, such as Ghana, together with Burkina Faso, which also has a jihadist problem. So yeah, if there's a bit of more cooperation, such as intelligence sharing and securing borders, that might help. But yeah, on the other day, ECOWAS can't also solve this security mess. This Mali has become, such a vast country, nobody can really control.
There's long been concern across West Africa about the spread of jihadist militancy further south into places like northern Ghana, northern Togo, northern Cote d'Ivoire. Where do those concerns sit today after this attack on Bamako?
Yeah, the same group that's now, attacking Bamako is already in Benin.
Benin, right next to Nigeria.
Exactly. And then also Nigeria has lots of jihadist activity, most recently attacks, not just in the north, also in western Nigeria, Kwara state bordering Benin. So that's a real concern that Mali collapse turns into this big retreat base for jihadists planned from there. Then the next step, pushing also in Ghana, Togo, and possibly Senegal. That's the huge concern,
Where does all this leave the people of Mali, and especially people in the capital, Bamako?
Yeah, people are really suffering even before that. When I was still there was very little electricity because, like you mentioned, the fuel supplies are being disrupted by jihadists, and electricity is mainly powered by generators. So life has been tough on people, and 300,000 Malians are living in refugee camps in neighbor Mauritania, and I expect if instability also spreads to the south, then more people will try to leave.
Of Lesing is a Bamako-based security analyst. And now for a quick look at some of the day's other headlines, starting with tech news from Australia.
The Australian government has just released draft legislation proposing a new tax on Meta, Google, and TikTok. The tax would help support journalism across Australia. It is an attempt to make digital giants pay for the news users find through their sites. Australian Prime Minister Anthony Albanese said platforms should not be able to peddle content without compensating the people who create it. We think that investment in journalism is critical to a healthy democracy, he added. Meta and Google oppose the tax. No comment so far from TikTok.
In Sri Lanka, police arrested 22 Buddhist monks at the airport. The monks were heading back from a 4-day trip to Thailand when authorities found a potent strain of high-grade cannabis hidden in their luggage, and no small amount. We're talking more than 200 pounds of cannabis, valued at more than $3 million. According to a police spokesperson, there was one monk who organized the trip but did not go along, and he told those who went to Thailand that the parcels they'd collected were a donation.
Finally, in the days when dinosaurs roamed on land, a giant carnivorous ancestor of the octopus swam the seas, alongside the better-known sea reptiles and pointy-toothed sharks of the Cretaceous era. That is according to a new analysis of fossilized jaws of this octopus ancestor found in Japan and on Vancouver Island in Canada. Scratches and chips on the jaws and teeth suggest the animals repeatedly crushed shells and bones. That study was published late last week in the journal Science.
And those are a few headlines you might have missed. One year ago today, the lights suddenly went out in Spain and Portugal, a total blackout, the worst Europe had seen in 2 decades. In some areas, full power was not restored until nearly a day later. Fortunately, widespread panic did not set in, although it's safe to say nerves from Lisbon to Barcelona were frayed. The World's Jerry Haddon reported shortly after the blackout about one tiny town in northeast Spain that was able to keep the lights on.
At about 12:30 p.m. on the day Spain went dark, the 197 residents of San Vicente del Monte in Spain's north noticed flickering lights. But it only lasted about 5 seconds, one unidentified resident told a local TV station the next day. Getting to town and finding all the lights on, said another resident, I was just in shock. The power was out everywhere except for here. The power stayed on in San Vicente because of a lithium battery about the size of a file cabinet in a green metal container. It had just been sitting there outside, nearly forgotten on the edge of the village, for 4 years. Mayor Lorenzo Gonzalez recalls how a local energy company called Viesco showed up in 2021 looking for someone to give it a try.
Y me dicen, oye, que queríamos sacarlo adelante, pero somos incapaces, que no nos dejan colocarlo en ningún sitio.
They said, look, we've been asking all over to set up this experimental battery, but no one's game. I told them, look, if you paint the container thing green so it blends in with the trees, then no problem. That could be the battery's nickname, no problem, because during the blackout, the village had none. The battery was supposed to last for 3 to 4 hours, said that first unnamed resident on TV. But the blackout lasted more than 7 hours, he said, and we never lost juice. All eyes have been on the village since, and not just for being the only place in Iberia for 7 long hours where you could charge your smartphone. Turns out that the little battery that could be part of a plan to avoid another energy catastrophe. But before the possible fixes, first, what went wrong?
Muy probablemente en la red había demasiada energía.
Spanish scientist and energy grid expert Antonio Turiel says there was most likely too much energy in the grid, which can set sparks flying if not addressed. Pinpointing exactly where the breakdown began will probably take months. In the meantime, the question of why the problem wasn't contained, why the whole country lost power, is causing heated debate. A lot of it zeroing in on renewable energy.
Y en ese momento tienes un 53% de generación fotovoltaica.
Turiel says that when the blackout hit, renewables, that is, solar and wind, were producing nearly 2/3 of Spain's electricity. When everything's working, explains Turiel, when the grid's in sync and supply and demand are perfectly matched, then renewables are wonderful. But if something unexpected happened, say a windstorm causes a spike in energy production,
Mientras había pocos sistemas volcando electricidad a la red, no pasaba nada porque el resto de sistemas sí que tenían capacidad de flexibilidad.
if renewables are just a small part of the energy puzzle, says Turiel, then the traditional systems can adapt and absorb fluctuations. The problem is when renewables are producing the lion's share of electricity and then something goes wrong. That's because renewables can't adapt as quickly as traditional energy sources like gas or hydropower. And since the big blackout on April 30th, that's been getting a lot of attention. But Turiel says beating up on renewables is unfair. Scientists have been warning the European Union for years, he says. You can't just roll out renewable energy without also creating a system to keep it stable.
Tienes una legislación europea que, por tal de favorecer una rápida expansión de los sistemas renovables,
We've got these European directives to expand renewables fast, he says, so the EU made lax rules around safety systems. He's talking about systems like maybe a whole network of batteries like the one in San Vicente del Monte. Linked together, they could quickly absorb excess energy or release it during shortfalls. The reason the EU hasn't made this part of the green energy push?
si tú pones todos los sistemas de estabilización, ya no es en absoluto ni de lejos. tan
Because
barato
our
como se
cheap
dice.
renewables would end up costing more than gas or coal, says Turiel, once you add in all the necessary infrastructure. For now, no one's willing to pay for it, at least not on a large scale.
Sí, nosotros si Viesgo quiere colocar, le dejo colocarlas en todos los municipios, en todas las pedanías.
San Vicente Mayor Lorenzo Gonzalez told local TV recently he'd happily sign off on thousands of batteries set up all across his region in Spain's north. Then again, he got his battery for free. For The World, I'm Jerry Haddon, Barcelona.
A year later, authorities say the outage had multiple causes: not enough emergency batteries like the one we just heard about, unusual surges and drops in electricity output, and a lack of connectedness to the rest of Europe. That would have given the massive electrical surge somewhere to go. The Spanish government promised to increase oversight and control of the grid, but that proposal stalled in Congress. Work has begun, though, on an undersea power cable linking Spain to the grid in neighboring France and beyond. It's supposed to be fully operational by 2028. You're with The World.
This is The World. I'm Carolyn Beeler. The robot news has been coming fast and furious this month. One robot won a half marathon in Beijing. Others captured a Russian position on the battlefield in Ukraine. And last week we learned of a robotic arm that beat table tennis champions at their own game. That example in particular showcases a new ability to react and adapt to an unpredictable world in real time. Kene Mbanisi is an assistant professor of robotics engineering at Olin College in Massachusetts. He says this latest advance in robotics is impressive for several reasons.
It is definitely a super cool factor. But beyond the cool factor, it demonstrates that robots can interact in the physical world in ways that humans can, and not just humans, but elite humans with very high levels of skill and capabilities. So that's very exciting.
Tell me more about that interacting with humans. I understand that something that's hard about robotics is getting robots to react properly when something unpredictable happens. Is that kind of the crux of why this is so interesting, this table tennis example?
Yes. So I'll say that what makes this particularly exciting is that this demonstrates the capability of robots to learn very specialized skill that takes people, decades to master. And that require very fast reaction times. Table tennis requires that. Adapting to moving and changing environment very quickly at a level that is, it's expert level. So that is what's really exciting here. And there's a type of technology that this robot and many other more recent robots use that enables that. It's a stream of machine learning called reinforcement learning.
Give me the two-sentence summary, if you could, of what reinforcement learning is.
Yeah, so the idea is that before recently, we had to program robots to do specific things. We had to give them specific instructions to do it. And so a human is sort of doing that. But with reinforcement learning, which is essentially learning by trial and error, meaning that because you learn this skill, by trying in different scenarios, you have been able to adapt to more scenarios than a human could have programmed you to do.
Would it be fair to say the advancements in robotics we're seeing are really advancements in AI?
Yeah, so for every robot system, we have like the mechanical, let's say the physical robot system has a mechanical component, and it also has like the intelligence, the ability for the robot to interact with its environment intelligibly. That is certainly all AI at the moment. AI is supercharging that capability for robots to have spatial understanding, know what's going on, and being able to predict how physics works, which is very hard. And we learned to do that over years and years. So AI is definitely enabling that to happen. And there are many applications in which we can see that people are feeling a bit safer, more comfortable to put robots into spaces that require high levels of safety because there's a bit more of a sense that robots can sort of adapt to uncertainty a bit better now.
What are the big barriers to robots being very useful day to day still?
That's a great question. A lot of the things that we are seeing in the news are mostly like really cool stunts, very exciting stuff, with very exciting capabilities. But where robots are actually being used and creating value are in very niche environments, very specialized tasks. For example, Amazon Robotics, or Amazon broadly, has one of the largest deployments of robots doing warehouse fulfillment. It's very specialized, very well-defined, very controlled environments. And robotics is doing pretty well there. When will robots come into our homes and do our dishes and help make our beds? And
This is my question. Yes, tell me when.
Yes. When do robots do that? It's going to take a long time. It's going to take a long time, primarily because of robustness and safety. Where you see robots really making inroads, we have designed the environment to fit the capabilities of the robot. But I don't think you would be very excited to design your house to fit the capabilities of your floor cleaning robot. In spaces where robots have to adapt to the human environment, it's very challenging. And that is really where we're trying to, make advancements in at the moment.
And I understand that like the dexterity of hands is a big problem with like humanoid robots. It is actually very hard to engineer a hand as good as a human hand. Is that right?
Yeah, that is right. That is, some people call that the holy grail of robotics, manipulation, dexterity of the human hand. Yes, that is a critical thing as well. That is like, okay, how could you actually get robots to effectively manipulate objects in a way that is even remotely similar or certain level of performance as humans can. It's a mix of, can you build robot hands and fingers that have the kinds of dexterity as a human? Plus, can you build the software that allows robots to understand, process both visual and tactile sensing capabilities so the robots can actually know and get a sense of what it's doing with its hand? Those two things need to come together really well. And there are advancements in that space. It's very easy to build a robot hand that picks up one thing. It's hard to build a robot hand that picks up anything.
Mm. I understand another part of your work is getting kids interested in science, engineering, robotics, especially kids from Africa. Why is that a particular passion of yours?
A couple of reasons. The first is that I strongly believe in the power of technology in creating a better world. I believe that technology can serve as a tool to create value, real life value. And so my passion, originally being from Nigeria and continuing to have family there and deep ties and connections, I'm very passionate about seeing the future where the global South is not just a consumer of technology, but helping shape it and helping, define how it shapes its own society. And we only do that through educating people to know how to use these tools to create value in their communities.
Kene Mbanisi is Assistant Professor of Robotics Engineering at Olin College in Massachusetts.
Still to come on the show, every April, 2,000 people flock to a remote estate in England for one reason: homemade marmalade. And no, that's not the same as jam. I'll pretend I didn't hear that. You're listening to The World.
This is The World. I'm Carolyn Beeler. King Charles is in Washington today trying to leverage the influence of the crown in front of Congress. But British influence is as much about culture and history as it is about government or the monarchy. For a taste of iconic Britishness, reporter Leo Hornak went to a remote country house in England over the weekend for a festival that celebrates a prized condiment.
Do you hear that? That metallic tinkling. Every single clatter is the sound of a small metal tasting spoon being thrown aside after delivering yet another delicious, tangy sample of something very British: homemade marmalade. I'm making a radio program about the festival for American radio. What have you just tasted?
I've tasted ruby grapefruit marmalade with snow fungus and dried Logan. It's absolutely delicious. Get yourself over from the USA to come and taste these lovely things.
I'm standing inside a packed marquee in the grounds of a remote medieval country house in northern England. And in front of us are long, long tables laden with hundreds and hundreds of pots of homemade marmalade. Each one a contestant in the ultimate breakfast condiment competition. The Dale-Maine International Marmalade Contest, the Olympics of marmalade. And for me and the other 2,000 or so visitors here today, the rules are strict. Each member of the public is permitted just one spoonful from each jar, no matter how delicious.
I've been on this one table for half an hour. I can't move anywhere.
So how many have you tasted?
Already about 30. It's quintessential. It really is. It's lovely.
For many people, breakfast isn't breakfast without the bittersweet, sour taste of marmalade. For traditionalists, there are only 3 ingredients: water, sugar, and the uniquely sharp oranges from Seville in Spain. And it's not just the juice of the oranges. The whole fruit, flesh and skin goes in. The skin is what gives marmalade its unique, complex bitterness. Some would say it's an acquired taste, not easy to adjust to if you're used to commercial jelly. And like everyone here, Paul Osborne has his own vision for what makes a great marmalade.
I just tried the lemon, honey and ginger. That's a really good one.
And people politely jostling for the best ones.
Exactly, yeah. You have to get your elbows out every now and again, especially with the old ladies.
I'm here with a very definite goal: to taste the medal winner of medal winners, the finest marmalade in the world.
Welcome to Dale-Maine and welcome to Cumbria. For anyone who doesn't live here, this is what it's like all the time.
Out on the carefully manicured lawn in front of Dalmain Manor, the prize ceremony is beginning. Picture Downton Abbey, but with a far greater emphasis on citrus fruits. Many in the crowds here are wearing orange hats, shirts, dresses. Even the flock of sheep on nearby hills have been dyed orange for the weekend.
A nice slice of toast, or maybe
Local kids from Staten Primary School have even composed a hymn to marmalade to make sure we stay properly focused on the subject. Prize categories include traditional marmalades, marmalades with alcohol, interesting additional ingredient marmalades. There is even a prize for marmalades made by people serving time in prison. They are generally not able to attend the ceremony.
I'd like to welcome Her Excellency, the Spanish Ambassador to the UK, Mrs. Emma Aparici.
And if this seems a very British affair, it is also explicitly about bringing different cultures together. This year, entries were received from more than 25 countries, ranging from Botswana to Georgia to Taiwan. In the Japanese town of Yawatahama, a sister marmalade festival has now been launched. One Japanese marmalade master this year swept the British event with 8 medals. Beatrice Hassel-McCosh is the director of the whole event and took over from her mother a few years ago. And Beatrice isn't new to the area. Her family have owned and lived in Dalmain Manor since 1679.
I think marmalade brings joy is the message.
She has the cheerful evangelical belief that there's no such thing as someone who doesn't like marmalade, just people who haven't yet tasted the right one or haven't spread enough of it on the right food.
Marmalade can be eaten with absolutely anything, so if you don't like it on toast, or if you don't think it's a breakfast thing, have it with sausages or have it with ham.
Back when Beatrice was a child, there was a worrying story in the British press that Nutella and peanut butter sales had, for the first time, exceeded marmalade. Beatrice's mother was determined not to let this pass and founded the contest, with the proceeds going to charity. And it has exploded since then.
So we have 3,400 entries this year. Every single day in January we get about 200 parcels and there's about 60 judges.
Beatrice is one of the judges, representing the family. Marathon tasting sessions take place inside the grand family home.
So you can immediately tell when something's a gold. And in the judging room, when a gold is announced, so everyone dings their glass and everyone cheers, and then usually they pass them round the room because everyone wants to taste it.
So now, obviously the most important question I'm going to ask, what makes a good marmalade for you?
It's fresh fruit, creativity. You just have no idea when you open the jars what's going to happen. Yeah, the Spanish ambassador yesterday described it as tasting fine wine.
Back in the tent, this year's Gold of Gold medals has been announced. The winner is Seville Orange with passion fruit marmalade, made by veteran competitor David Hinkins.
I've had to sign a non-disclosure agreement, so I cannot make it or give anybody the recipe for 12 months.
It's been a hard road. David's won medals before, but never the double gold. But he's never given up hope.
11 years of pain, 11 years of work making marmalade and sending it up here. You know, second is nowhere in some respects, isn't it?
Victory was based on a single last-minute decision.
At the end of making it, I actually thought I'm going to put more passion fruit in, and clearly it worked and I've won. Fortune does favour the brave.
So I'm now approaching, this is the Mount Olympus of marmalade, really. This is the table where this year's winner, the Dalmain World Marmalade Awards Best in Show 2026, a marmalade created by Mr. David Hinkins. You have to queue up to taste it. And I'm getting a very generous spoon. And here we go. Wow. I can say I've tasted the best marmalade in the world now. That is an amazing marmalade. I think I'm going to buy a jar of that.
For the world, I'm Leo Hornack, Cumbria, in England.
He's not sharing. The World comes to you every weekday from the Nan and Bill Harris studio in Boston. You can find us online anytime at theworld.org. I'm Marco Werman.
And I'm Carolyn Beeler. Thank you for listening, and join us right back here tomorrow.
The World is supported by the Carnegie Corporation of New York. working to reduce political polarization through philanthropic support for education, democracy, and peace. More information at carnegie.org. By the Lumina Foundation, committed to a fair, universal system for learning beyond high school that offers every American the chance for a better life. LuminaFoundation.org. By the PRX Ambassador Council, whose members include Renee Vacchio-Albi, Roman Mars, the Kelson Foundation, and the Ken and Lucy Lehman family. The World's theme music is composed by Ned Porter. The World is a co-production of GBH Boston and PRX.